She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. She opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife.
Greetings, welcome, and good afternoon. My scheduled guest for today, we've had to reschedule that show. There were some unfortunate circumstances, some things beyond everyone's control. You know, when you live and operate in a volatile region, things happen. So we're going to pivot, and I have a question. Can Donald Trump run for, be elected for, be appointed to the president of the United States for a third term? And if not, why the discussion? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to everyone. Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which most events take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, let's start with this question. Can Donald Trump become president for a third term? Let us, for the answer to that question, turn to the controlling document in the issue, the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. And Section 1 of the 22nd Amendment reads, "No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice." And please note, the word consecutive is not anywhere in this amendment because a lot of people interject or insert the word consecutive and it does not exist. And no person who has held the office or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected shall be elected to the office more than once. And the article will not apply to a person holding office when the article was proposed by Congress. So, folks, just as with the birthright citizenship issue, the Constitution is very clear here. Under no circumstance can the sitting president, as in Donald Trump, become president for a third term? That's settled constitutional law. No. Or if I could quote that brilliant African-American philosopher, Whitney Houston, all hell to the no, Bobby, hell to the no. Can't happen. But if you go back, and I keep saying this, and folks, you really need to listen to me. If you go to the Steve Bannon Frontline interview from 2019, where he talks about flooding the zone. He talks about their intention is to just, he also called it the I think he called it the shotgun effect, putting so much stuff out there that folks just don't know which way to turn. Folks just don't know what to address. Folks, and I use this analogy because I think it is incredibly applicable. It's analogous to the recent California wildfires, where you had the Palisades fire was raging uncontrollably, and they're fighting the Palisades fire. And then while they're fighting the Palisades fire, a fire erupts in the Douglas Campbell. Wow, thank you for that $20 super sticker right off the bat. Thank you. Greatly appreciate that. Then you turn to the Hollywood Hills, and there's a fire in the Hollywood Hills. And then you turn and there's a fire in Altadena. And now you got folks just standing in the middle of the street, or standing in the middle of the 405 with a hose in their hand. They don't know which way to turn. And that's so much of the logic that, or the rationale, or the strategy that is being implemented now by the Trump administration. They're putting so much garbage out there that it all can't be collected in one time. So that's the only logic that I can see relative to the Trump administration, and why they would make such a ridiculous statement when anybody that can read the 22nd Amendment is very, very clear. And we have to remember why the 22nd Amendment was ratified in the first place, because that came after FDR had won his fourth term. And I'd have to check to see if the 22nd Amendment was ratified after he died or while he was still in office, because I'll go back to this piece. It shall not apply to persons holding the office when the article was proposed. And I don't see in this particular section that I'm looking at when it was actually ratified. But that's really irrelevant at this point. FDR, having served his fourth consecutive term, and having died in office, that was when folks sat back and said, enough, 4 terms is enough, and they settled on 2. But you also have to remember that FDR came in at the beginning of the Great Depression and helped to shepherd the country through some incredibly perilous times. Dr. Nick Rivera, have you heard that Trump is considering being part of the British Commonwealth? With the Constitution still apply? I have no idea how to answer that question. Ricky Hatcher, thank you for that $10 super sticker. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. So now let me shift gears and move to another point. And that is this discussion about Greenland and Donald Trump and VP Vance talking about, and Robert Brown. Man, hey folks, let's roll with it. I see some momentum building here. I see Robert Brown responding to Ricky Hatcher, responding to Douglas Campbell. In fact, if y'all want to play poker with this thing, and Robert Brown, see Ricky Hatcher's 10 and raise him 10. And Ricky, see Robert's 10 and raise him 20. Let's get this thing moving and grooving. But back to the thank you all very much. I truly, as sincerely as I can be, greatly appreciate that. So Greenland and Donald Trump, well, JD Vance was in Greenland and talking about using the United States military to Charnice with a $20 super sticker. Damn, y'all are making a brother feel some love today. Really, really appreciate it. Shanice Wilson, thank you. So Robert and Ricky, now that Shanice done put a 20 on the table, I don't know what you brothers gonna do. Back to Greenland. Sorry. So JD Vance goes to Greenland and he talks about the United States annexing Greenland. And he says that military force will be used if necessary. And one of the things that he says is China is planning to take control of Greenland. And then he says, we know that. No, JD Vance, you don't know that. Because I've never heard President Xi Jinping of China say that. I've never heard the foreign minister Wang Yi say that. I don't think you've ever heard them say that either, JD Vance. You are using a popular trope that Donald Trump uses when he says something utterly ridiculous and he says, everybody knows that's true. No, I think as Sport and Life said, ain't necessarily so. No. In fact, if you look at the recent history and look at how China engages in situations like this, no. What China has what is known, what they call, and this is a real policy, is called the win-win strategy. When was the last time you saw China invade somebody? When was the last time you read a story where China offered assistance or China used leverage to have regime change in a country? Think long and hard, because you'd have to think long and hard, because the last time China did it was never. That's not how they operate. If China is interested in the strategic minerals, okay, Vietnam, okay, I'll give you that one, Vietnam. So how many years ago was that? And my answer was really more rhetorical than anything. But what China would do is China would call Denmark and have a sit down with Denmark, and they would negotiate a relationship, a business deal, where they would pay fair market value for the minerals or for the access to whatever it was they were negotiating. And there would be no military threat. There would be no jingoism. There would be no saber rattling. It'd be a business deal. In fact, if you think back to a couple of months ago, when Donald Trump first started this ridiculous chatter about taking over Greenland, the Prime Minister of Denmark said, well, let's talk about it. If you want access, to these minerals, why not cut a deal? So with him having said that, what this says to me is Donald Trump really isn't planning to invade Greenland, not that I'd put it past him, not that I'd be surprised if it happened, but as we sit here on the 31st of March, this, I think, is what he considers to be a negotiating strategy. He's figuring that if he starts thumping his chest and rattling his sabers, that and threatening Denmark with, I'll just come in militarily and take it, that somehow that will force Denmark to the table, and that Donald Trump, being the brilliant deal maker that he is, the guy that bankrupted a casino and has gone bankrupt in other businesses like 7 or 12 or 25 or 1,277 times. Anybody that can bankrupt a casino has got to be a stone fool. Stone fool. How a casino is a license to print money. How do you take control of a casino and bankrupt a casino? You got to be a stone fool. Anyway, where was I? I confused myself. Oh, so I think what he thinks he's doing is he thinks he's posturing for a stronger negotiating position. Addie, $100 super sticker. Thank y'all are going buck wild today. Keep going buck wild. Please do. Addie, thank you. Y'all are throwing me off here. So he believes in his warped mind that he is posturing for a stronger negotiating position. Why do I now this is my opinion. I don't have any data to support what I'm about to say, but this is my opinion, and I think it's a fairly accurate position. President Putin was asked over the weekend, are you concerned? This is a paraphrase of the question. This is not a quote. Are you concerned about Donald Trump's threats over invading or annexing Greenland? And Putin's response was, no, that's between them. Russia has nothing to do with this. I have nothing to do with this. It's between them. A couple of things. One, Vladimir Putin has his hands full with Ukraine. Got that. If he were to have provided any other answer, and again, Addie, thank you for that $100 super sticker. That's very, very generous. If he had given any other answer than that, he then, I think, would have started an escalation of the rhetoric, which he's too smart to do. And so one of the reasons why I think he was as reserved with his response as he was because he knows ain't no way in the world that Donald Trump is going to send the U.S. military as a invading force into Greenland. So he's basically saying, why would I get caught up in that stupidity? I got bigger fish to fry. So that's one point. The other point is Denmark owns Greenland. Greenland is a self-governing enclave, but it is owned by Denmark. Denmark is a NATO country. The United States is a NATO country. So if Donald Trump invades Greenland, what you have is one NATO country invading another NATO country, which creates an a NATO Charter Article 5 conflict. Because Article 5 reads, and I will paraphrase, when one NATO country is invaded, yes, Dr. Nick, NATO on NATO crime. When one NATO country is invaded, all NATO countries are invaded. And so as a result of that, all NATO countries must respond in the manner in which they deem fit. And it's that language, the manner in which they deem fit, that I think a lot of people overlook. So that doesn't mean that the other NATO countries have to respond militarily. It means they are called upon to respond as they deem necessary. They could send bottles of water if they wanted to, if they felt that were a proper response. But the question being, Amanda, good afternoon to you as well. Don't mess with the Vikings. I like that. Whether in Minnesota or whether in Denmark or Norway, or Sweden, multi-tom-tom. So the question becomes, what would the other NATO countries do if one NATO member attacks another NATO member? Some might say, oh, we don't have precedent for that. To which I say, au contraire, we do. It's called the United States bombing the Nord Stream pipeline about 4 years ago. That was NATO on NATO crime. That was the United States. That was the United States as one NATO member bombing the infrastructure of another NATO country, that being Germany, because the the Nord Stream pipeline is a joint venture between Germany and Russia. So we do have precedent for this. And as you all know, nothing happened. When the United States bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, nothing happened. Germany didn't do anything, and none of the other NATO members did anything either. So this would be the second time. In fact, I'm now just thinking this through. This would be the second time that that the United States has been responsible for creating the circumstance of a second this would be the second time that the United States has been responsible for a NATO country invading another NATO country. And here's another thing that I think is important to understand. The United States really just they don't got the juice. I mean, Americans are still living off of this misperception of the United States being that unitary power, that the United States, has this undefeatable military at its disposal, and that's just not true anymore. And the perfect example of that is how it's played out in Ukraine. The one thing that Donald Trump doesn't know a lot, but one of the things that Donald Trump does know is we do not have the standing military horsepower to go in and mess with Russia directly, mano a mano, over Ukraine. And NATO doesn't have it either. That all of this discussion about Europe sending troops into NATO, please stop it. Stop it. Stop the lie. Based upon Scott Ritter's military math, which I based upon Scott Ritter's military math, which I trust, he says it would take going in 750,000 to 800,000 troops. Where are they going to get them from? That would be if they decided to try to confront Russia in Ukraine. Where are they going to get them from? As we have watched this whole Ukraine fiasco play out, all of these wonder weapons that were supposed to be game changers in the conflict. Oh boy, when Germany sends those Leopard tanks onto the battlefield, oh my goodness, that's going to change the dynamic. They blew them rascals up as soon as they got them started. Oh, wait till those F-16s get there. Oh my, please. Ain't happening. So stop it. All of this distraction. Stop it. It's fiction. It's vaporware. It's all sizzle and no steak. So it'll be very interesting to see if, again, with these changing dynamics, and the dynamics are changing by the day, it will be very interesting to see how this is going to shake out. And Donald Trump is going to try to spin this. He's going to try to spin this, because I do think at the end of the day that there will be some negotiation here, and that the United States will be granted access to the minerals that it is looking for. But it's also, I think, important to see that not only does the United States see this from the as a necessity from the access to mineral perspective, I also think the United States sees this necessary from a geopolitical, from a spatial perspective, that the island of Greenland, particularly as global warming is occurring and some of that thought to be impenetrable ice is now becoming penetrable. Pauline Douglas, thank you for that $20 super sticker. Thank you very much. That from a land mass perspective, that this is becoming more of an important issue. But I don't see Greenland turning over. I don't see Greenland turning. I don't see Norway turning Greenland over to the United States. So that's one point. Donald Trump switching now over to some economic conversations, and this discussion about tariffs, and you've got Peter Navarro, this senior trade advisor, estimating that Trump's tariffs could raise about $6 trillion over the next decade. Can anybody please explain to me where Navarro is getting his data from? Because it really appears to me that he's making this up, as Trump tends to make up a lot of the things that he touts and says and proposes and claims that everybody understands, this, or everybody knows that. Can you tell me where Navarro is Kevin Baptiste, from his butt, where Navarro is getting this data? And one of the things that I don't that troubles me with these interviews that members of the cabinet do, that Trump does, so for example, they don't ask for data. They don't ask for evidence. They don't say, Mr. President, where are you getting this from? And then when he says, oh, well, everybody knows it, or, oh, well, they're telling me this. Well, who is telling you this, Mr. President? Because, no, sir, the world is not flat. No, sir, the sun does not revolve around the earth. Oh, well, everybody knows the sun revolves around the earth. No, sir, it does not. Where, and I'm not advocating that people be nasty. Amanda, you did what? You told, anyway. Navarro, you're $6 billion. From where? How is this going? How is this supposed to happen? Because what Navarro is still touting is this mythology that the producing country upon which the tariff is applied pays the tariff. That's just not right. That's not how it works. So Donald Trump, the assumption here is we're going to put $1,000 tariff on a Mercedes, and I know that Mercedes are manufactured in the United States, but yet don't get caught up in the specifics. Just stick with the analogy. And that $1,000 tariff is put on a Mercedes, and that Germany is going to pay the United States Treasury $1,000 extra to sell that Mercedes in the United States. No, it doesn't work like that. What Daimler-Benz does, and Daimler-Benz is the company that manufactures Mercedes, not the German government. What Daimler-Benz will do is raise the price of a Mercedes by $1,000. So Multi-Tom-Tom, who's out right now looking to buy a Mercedes, or Kevin Baptiste, who's out there on the West Coast looking for a Mercedes, goes to the dealer and says, why is the Mercedes I'm looking at right now $1,000 more than it was when I was here 2 weeks ago? And the guy at the Mercedes dealer says, well, you need to call Donald Trump because the United States just imposed $1,000 tariff, and that's why the price of your car is now $1,000 more. So Kevin Baptiste, or Multi-Tom-Tom, please pay me, or Zhao Yun, please pay me, Mr. Daimler Chrysler, Daimler Benz, please pay me $1,000. And then Zhao Yun or Multi Tom Tom or Kevin Baptiste says, oh, but Donald Trump said that you already paid the tariff to the United States Treasury. To which the salesman at the Daimler Benz dealer says, and you listen to Donald Trump, why? So that's a very long way of getting to Peter Navarro, supposed to be a senior trade advisor, doesn't seem to understand tariffs and how tariffs operate. And later in the week, we're going to have Dr. Richard Wolff on. He'll be with us Thursday. We'll talk about this in more detail on Thursday. But that's just a very brief summary of these folks are tripping. They are lying to you. And so while Peter Navarro, well, I can understand why the folks at Fox News, the folks at Fox News would not challenge Peter Navarro in this manner, and which is probably why he's gone on Fox News with this BS, because he knows that garbage will go unchallenged. But any place else he goes, somebody needs to say, excuse me, time out, but that's not how tariffs work. And in many instances, and I think it's important for people to understand this, excuse me, it's important, yes, C-SPAN, Cherie, C-SPAN, it's important for people to understand that by raising that counterpoint, are you going to get Peter Navarro to say, oh, crazy me, you're correct? No, he's not going to do that. In fact, if you say it to the president while he's on Air Force One, he might push that eject button and jettison you out into the stratosphere. But the people listening to the interview need to hear the pushback. They need to hear the pushback. They need to have somebody say, but wait a minute, Mr. President, tariffs don't work like that. And then he'll probably say, oh, you're stupid. Or he'll say, well, what entity are you from? And you say, oh, I'm from whatever. And he'll go, oh, well, that's why you asked such a stupid question, because that's typical Donald Trump. But still, I like that. But still, people listening to this, they need to hear the pushback. I also wanted to touch on this deportation, this deportation issue, because the State Department now says that it's transferred 17 prisoners to El Salvador after a successful counterterrorism operation. You've got more folks being sent to El Salvador. And again, this one is my opinion, but I think you need to pay very close attention to this. I think if you focus merely on the United States sending immigrants to El Salvador, I think you'll be missing the much bigger issue. Sending immigrants to El Salvador is a trial balloon. I believe, and again, this is my opinion, that the ultimate objective of the Trump administration relative to sending people to El Salvador is they will eventually try to start sending American citizens to El Salvador. Think about that. He challenged birthright citizenship. He challenged birthright citizenship. And the 14th Amendment is very, very clear. All people born in the United States are American citizens. The 14th Amendment is very clear in the same manner that the 22nd Amendment is very clear about, Yah says you can see that. I hope that means you can see what I'm talking about and not some other conversation in the chain. The 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship is very clear about who's an American citizen and who's not. The 22nd, well, not who's not an American citizen, but who is an American citizen. If you're born here or naturalized here, you are an American citizen. There's no debate on that. There's no ambiguity in that. There's no yeah, but, or what if, or maybe somehow in that. That's not there. The same way with the 22nd Amendment about can a person run for or be elected or appointed to a third term? No. It's very clear. There's no yeah, but there. There's no what if there. There's no how about if. No. That isn't there. But that doesn't matter to Donald Trump. Reality doesn't matter to Donald Trump. The Constitution doesn't matter to Donald Trump. And Steve Bannon told us we are here to deconstruct the administrative state. So remember, when Lil Marco went to El Salvador, and the president of El Salvador said to Lil Marco, you can send your prisoners to us. And what did Lil Marco say? In fact, actually, it's not so much what he said, it's what he didn't say. He didn't say, thank you, but no, we don't need that. He said, nobody's ever made that offer before. We'll have to take that under consideration. So as the Trump administration sees growing pushback to their growing fascism, to their growing authoritarianism, you're seeing now much more vocal Republicans at these town halls. We'll have to see what the outcome is of tomorrow's special elections in Wisconsin and down in Florida. But if Americans start to become more aggressive in their pushback, it will not surprise me if you start to see a greater test by the administration on issues such as this. And let me give you two other words, and they're not ice, baby. Thank you, multi-tom-tom. Martial law. When Donald Trump says, oh, there are ways, when he was on Air Force One and they and one of the reporters asked him about this third term thing, and he said he always speaks, at least he thinks he's speaking in riddles, and he always thinks he's speaking in conundrums that are wrapped in riddles that are wrapped in, trust me, homeboy, you're not that clever, you're not that smart. He's, well, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, all that kind of BS. He may very well be referring to martial law. And remember, in the 2020, when he lost to Biden, and he's still saying, he said it today on Air Force One, that he didn't lose the 2020. In fact, he said, now listen to this. He said, actually, it would be a fourth term because I didn't lose the election in 2020. So he said, so actually, what you're, in this, I'm paraphrasing, actually, what you're considering to be the third term would be my fourth term. Martial law could be what he's playing with as he talks about a fourth term. Folks, there are a lot of incredibly dangerous implications. There are incredibly dangerous references. There are incredibly dangerous suppositions that are being made here. And I pose this question to you all again. Where's the pushback from the Democratic Party? I'm hearing more commercials, more pro-Trump commercials about here's one of the latest ones now, because you've seen all how he's been attacking law firms, that some of the big multi-million dollar law firms, some of the biggest in the country, that were either doing pro bono work for entities that were suing the administration in his last term, or some of these firms like Covington and Burling and Wilmer and something else, and some of these other major law firms where some of the attorneys from the Biden administration Justice Department, when they left the government, they went back and worked for these law firms. And now Donald Trump has been threatening them with taking away some of their attorneys' security clearances. He's been threatening retribution against these firms, and a number of these law firms represent clients that are trying to get business with the government. They're engaged in government transaction. And so if you're a major corporation and you're trying to get a contract with a U.S. government agency, and you have secured the services of Covington and Burling, and I'm just using them as an example because that's one of the names I can remember, to negotiate with the government on your behalf. And Donald Trump has just said publicly that Covington and Burling is now persona non grata within the halls of the government. You're probably going to pull your business from that law firm. And again, I'm just using Covington and Burling because that's a major DC law firm, and that's one of the few I can remember. And so that's one attack on the legal process, on the judicial process, by attacking the attorneys. What's the other thing he's doing? He's already fired the inspector generals of the agency, of the government, of the United States, of the varying government agencies. And who is the inspector general? The inspector general is the cop on the beat, that's supposed to be the independent cop on the beat that's supposed to be the check and balance of fraud, waste, and abuse within the agency. So Donald Trump says, under my administration, we're going after waste, fraud, and abuse. But you fire the inspector general in the agency that is the cop on the beat to protect against what? Waste, fraud, and abuse. So we know that's a lie. So you attack, you remove the inspector general, you threaten the law firms that are independent entities, private corporations. And now I'm seeing commercials for, what do they call it? Frivolous lawsuits. Have you seen this one? The commercials for the what they're calling the frivolous lawsuits. So that if you sue somebody and you lose the lawsuit, Trump is trying to make it so you have to pay the legal fees of the person you sued. What does that do? Well, it puts a it has a very stifling impact on people suing the government, people suing large businesses, people suing anybody. If you have to not only factor into your analysis of whether to bring a lawsuit or not, if you have to factor into that analysis, not only how much are my attorneys going to charge me, what is my probability of win, but also if I lose, I'm on the hook for the person I sued's legal fees. Oh, that's going to have an incredibly stifling impact on, and your lawsuit isn't frivolous. First of all, what's the definition of a frivolous lawsuit? Who's going to make the determination that the suit that you're bringing is frivolous? And so let's not put it in the context of multi-tom-tom suing Cherie. Well, first of all, because nobody would ever sue Cherie. But let's not put it in the context of multi-tom-tom suing Cherie. Let's put it in the context of Zhao Yun suing Ford Motor Company. Let's put it in the context of Kevin Baptiste suing IBM. Zhao Yun buys a Ford F-150 truck only to find out that the self-restraining seatbelt tensioner has failed. Or look at the one that actually happened fairly recently, the exploding airbag. That happened with I think a Japanese manufacturer with Japanese cars. So, but let's say you buy your Ford F-150. Let's say Zhao Yun buys a Ford F-150 and the airbag explodes, causing severe damage to Zhao Yun and his family, heaven forbid. So now Zhao Yun decides he wants to sue Ford. And somebody in the engineering department at Ford gives Zhao Yun an email stream from Ford's engineers that identify they knew this was a problem and tried to cover it up. So now Zhao Yun has a very favorable case to show that not only was Zhao Yun affected by this, but 3,000 people in the country were affected by this as well. and you sue Ford and you lose. What do you think Ford's legal bills are going to be, since Ford not only has attorneys, but Ford has an entire staff of in-house counsel? And every attorney on the email stream gets to billable hours to this case, Zhao Yun versus Ford Motor Company. How many millions of dollars in legal fees do you think Zhao Yun v. Ford is going to be billed? Did I ever like Johnson Cash as a country singer? I don't know who Johnson Cash is. Never heard Johnson Cash sing. So I've heard Johnny Cash. Oh, you mean Johnny Cash? Johnson Cash. Shiri, do you mean Johnny Cash? Did I like Johnny? Are you trying to distract me? Oh, Johnny Cash. Yeah. I enjoy Johnny Cash. I thought Johnny Cash was an incredibly talented singer. Why do you ask? I ask. Anyway, so this is all a big part. This whole idea of frivolous lawsuits and the commercials that the folks that are supporting the Trump campaign, the commercials that they're running, they are trying to put it in the context of individual lawsuits. But that's not really what their agenda is. It has nothing to do with the Zhao Yun suing Cherie or Cherie suing Amanda. No, they're trying to put it in the context of two things: individual plaintiffs suing individual defendants. And they also talk about the effect that these lawsuits have on the cost of goods that manufacturers are factoring in to their pricing structures, to their cost base, the cost of frivolous lawsuits. If you've seen these commercials, you'll know that's not what this is about. That's all just a red herring. It's about wanting to be sure that through the Trump administration, they make it harder for the average citizen to sue corporate America for fraud, to sue corporate America for producing, knowingly producing defective materials and having to pay multi-million dollar settlements out to affected consumers. That's what they're really trying to do. They're framing it in the context of, again, Amanda is suing Multi-Tom-Tom for whatever, and Amanda's lawsuit is frivolous because she doesn't like Multi-Tom-Tom. That's not what this is about. This is about Cherie getting a defective bottle of NyQuil and it causing incredible medical bills for Cherie. And so Cherie is suing the manufacturer of NyQuil for $15 billion. That's what this is really about. Let me see. So I got a couple questions here. Can I explain what a constitutional convention actually is and whether could use one to change the law? Okay. So there are basically two ways you can amend the Constitution. And this is in the Constitution. One is two-thirds of the states, two-thirds of the state legislatures vote to call for a constitutional convention. That's one way you can do it. You can also do it through legislation, proposing legislation in Congress, and then you got a two-thirds voting process that you got to go through in Congress. So you can either do it through Congress, or you can do it through the states calling for two-thirds of the states through the state legislatures calling for a constitutional convention. If you do it through the congressional process, then only the piece of I believe this is true. Only the piece of legislation that is being proposed will be voted on. If you do it through the state process, through a state constitutional convention, now the entire Constitution is up for grabs. And that's why calling for a constitutional convention is a very, very dangerous process, because you lose control of the agenda of the convention. Could Trump use a constitutional convention to change the law? Yes. Yes. But it's not just a matter of Donald Trump as president saying, y'all meet me down in Mar-a-Lago, we're going to have a constitutional convention. No, it has to be, that convention has to be called for and passed by two-thirds of the state legislatures. That's how, but the answer to the question, could Trump use a constitutional convention to change that, restrict the 23rd Amendment? Yes. But getting a convention would be a hell of a Herculean lift. Marco Rubio, who was once critical of Trump, now appears closely aligned with him. That's true. Given his past flip-flops, some wonder, is Rubio being used to serve a purpose only to be pushed aside later if he's no longer useful to the Trump agenda? Well, the answer to that question is yes, but that's not restricted. That's not limited to Marco Rubio. That's everybody in Trump orbit. You are only in Trump orbit so long as you serve the purpose of Trump orbit. And once the Trumpians see that you have served your purpose, then that ejection button is hit and you are sent into the stratosphere. How do I know this? Look at what's that brother's name from South Carolina? The one who thought that he was actually being considered to be vice president. Senator from South Carolina. I thought when y'all would post, what's his name? Some y'all? Hang on a second here. Senator from South Carolina. Not Lindsey Graham. Tim Scott. Remember, he was walking all around Donald Trump like a puppy, following him around like a puppy. And because he thought that it wasn't Lindsey Graham. Yeah, Tim Scott. Tim Scott thought that he was actually being considered to be vice president. No, he was considered to be the chauffeur. He might have been considered to be the butler, or he might have been considered to be the chauffeur's butler, but he was never seriously being considered as vice president. And so once his usefulness was served, when was the last time anybody heard his name? His mama ain't even heard his name in the last 3 months. When was the last time you saw Tim Scott anywhere? You might see him at Family Dollar, but when was the last time you saw Tim Scott somewhere? But now, so here's the thing I'd say to you about Lil Marco. Given his past flip-flop, I believe that Marco Rubio's political career has been severely, severely damaged. Why? Because you can't trust him. Not that you could trust him before this, but he now is like Nikki Haley, a ugly opportunist. Now, when I say Nikki Haley ugly, pretty good looking babe. But in terms of politically, done. Opportunist. You can't be trusted. You're flip-flop, particularly Lil Marco, because Lil Marco now is having to articulate and champion positions that he was staunchly in opposition or opposed to before he became the Secretary of State. So he's now having to try to convince people of things that he knows is BS. That is one of the reasons why he won't be that's why he will be less than successful as a Secretary of State if he has to sit across a table from Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, or if he has to sit across the table from Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, is because they both know he's nothing but a chump. He's nothing but a punk. Hence why Donald Trump dubbed him Lil Marco. Because he's got no backbone. He doesn't stand for anything. And so he's going into the room to sit down with Sergei Lavrov, a professional, a well-trained professional diplomat. Sergei Lavrov has forgotten more about diplomacy than Lil Marco will ever know. Wang Yi, professional diplomat, was trained, went to, I don't know the actual name of the institution, but his college pursuits, he majored in diplomacy at the Chinese Diplomatic University. He's a lifelong diplomat, not a lifelong plutocrat like Lil Marco, who is merely using the position of Secretary of State as what he hopes to be a stepping stone to the presidency, similar to what Hillary Clinton did. Because I believe, and I don't think I'm too far off here, I believe that Bill Clinton negotiated with Barack Obama. Remember Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama vying for the Democratic nomination in, 2012? And Barack Obama is starting to gain traction, and Hillary Clinton her campaign is starting to lose altitude. But she won't go away. And even as it looks like she's going away, she won't endorse Barack Obama. Bill Clinton steps in and says, Barack, do me this solid. I'll convince Hillary to step aside and endorse you if you will agree to make her your Secretary of State. That way, when you're done and she runs again, she'll be able to check that box in terms of her vitae, in terms of her bona fides, and she'll be able to say, not only was I married to a president, not only did I sleep with a president in the White House, I was also the Secretary of State. So that's why I think Lil Marco, bit the bullet. I can say biting other things, but I won't. Bit the bullet, and is now running behind Donald Trump like a puppy. Couple other questions, and we got to get out. Could his shifting loyalty signal something deeper about how power is being consolidated? That's an interesting question. Yeah, but no, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one a little longer. But I think Lil Marco's shifting loyalty has more to say about how Lil Marco has no morals, and how Lil Marco has no backbone, and how Lil Marco will do almost anything to achieve his ends, as opposed to the consolidation of power. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't know how much power Lil Marco had to begin with to consolidate. I think it just showed his desperation, and that he's so desperate to stay relevant and stay in the mix that he would even suck up to a racist, narcissistic, xenophobic bigot, as Lindsey Graham called him. So Ted Cruz is the same way. All those people that you saw, Donald Trump comes out and says that Ted Cruz's wife is ugly. And I can't remember what she looks like. She may be. I don't know. I ain't seen a woman. And then he also said that Ted Cruz's father was involved in the assassination of Kennedy. But when you looked in the box at the convention, Ted Cruz is sitting in the box. When you look in the box, Lil Marco sitting in the box. So I don't know how much that is about consolidation of power, and I'm presenting it in that manner again, not to say you're wrong with the question, but they're just suckers. They're just punks and suckers. Is it legally possible for a president to declare martial law to seize immense power or delay elections? Yes, but that's a good question. I've got to look up the actual process of declaring martial law. I think Congress has to participate in that process as well. I don't think in this country that the president unilaterally can declare martial law. I think there are some other factors that have to play into that, but that's a good question. I got to look up that answer. So with that, folks, again, we're rescheduling our discussion for today. Again, sometimes, particularly when you're dealing with people that are living in incredibly, I didn't think that you could do it unilaterally. But again, I know that, but I don't know exactly what Kevin Baptiste. I know you can't do it unilaterally. What I have to confirm is exactly what the stages are in order to do that. And Cherie, you asked me, have I ever heard of sundown towns? You mean like this? Come on, y'all. Come on. Who you messing with? Come on, y'all. As I used to say to my son, I won't say that because I'm joking, and you all might take it the wrong way. So Cherie, does that answer your question? Have I ever heard of sundown towns? And I've had James Lowen. I've had James Lowen on my Sirius XM show a couple of times. So the answer to your question, Cherie, is yes, I have heard of sundown towns. With that, hey folks, really appreciate y'all hanging with me today, and the contributions that you all made today. I can't tell you how much I truly appreciate it. But along with the contributions, we need you all to go to YouTube and to subscribe to the show. Really, really, really need that level of support. Nobody dropped the Bitcoin. Well, wild chat today. Yeah, it was, Amanda. It was a wild chat. I don't think it was a ridiculous chat. And again, I got the cancellation of the guest happened at the very last minute. I mean, when I say very last minute, I mean like 2:59 p.m. So we just had to roll with it. And sometimes with live broadcasts, this is what you have to do. So, Amanda, it was a wild chat today. I don't think it was chatter. And I hope I made some sense. And I hope I touched on some things that were of value. I think they were, because this was one of the highest single days of raising that we had. So maybe we need to, for the sake of keeping the show going, maybe we need to do this more often. Kevin, good. Thank chat room. Y'all had him rolling, but informative as always. So thank y'all. So with that, Amanda, no offense taken. No offense taken. I got a pretty thick skin, so no offense taken. So with that, again, I got to thank you all for staying with me today, and thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Subscribe. We need y'all to subscribe. We need you to get Lottie Dottie and everybody to subscribe to the show. Follow us on social media. And tomorrow, Gerald Pereira is going to join us. Tomorrow, Gerald Pereira will be joining us. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. That talk without analysis is just chatter. And I don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Gerald Pereira is going to join us. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.